Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Ian Kavat. The Philippines is calling on China to de-escalate tensions in the skies over the West Philippine or South China Sea following Chinese Air Force actions described by Ferdinand Marcos Jr. as unjustified, illegal and reckless. The Philippine Navy condemned them as coercive, aggressive, deceptive. Beijing said its actions were professional and legal. Philippines military released this video of Chinese aircraft dropping several flares in the path of a Philippine light aircraft during its routine patrol over Manila's exclusive economic zone. Beijing says the Philippines was trespassing in Chinese territory over Scarborough Shoal and that Manila was infringing on its sovereignty. In the first such incident between the two sides in the skies, we ask whether this marks an escalation into a much more dangerous and extensive confrontation between Manila and Beijing, and where that leaves the provisional agreement for the resupply of Second Thomas Shoal. And earlier, the Philippines and Vietnam held their first joint Coast Guard exercises. What message does this send to China? Joining us today are Tso Chen-dong, National Taiwan University political science professor, former Kuomintang Mainland Affairs Department director, and a Taiwan-U.S. China relations expert, and Ronan Fu, Academia Sinica Institute of Political Science Assistant Research Fellow. A very warm welcome to both of you on the show today. Professor Tso, let me start with you first. So on one side, we have the Philippines saying that this basically violates international law in terms of aviation safety. The Chinese side said that their actions were professional and legal. So how do we square this difference?
First of all, I don't think it's very useful to resort to so-called legal ground because of two reasons. First of all, there is no binding legal norm to govern the encounter in the air between different countries' Air Force flights. For example, in 2018, ASEAN countries and China, United States, as well as some other countries signed a code on unexpected encounter in the air, but that is non-binding.
If we accept that there is a code, though, which helps to, maintain safety in the air, do you think that the Philippines did have, were within their rights to basically make a diplomatic complaint about this?
Well, of course, no matter whether it is legal or not, it is dangerous. And so it is very important for Philippines or any country that face that kind of action to file their protest and to let the PLA know that this is dangerous.
Professor Fu, you wanted to add to that?
So I would like to add that actually it represents like a fundamental disagreement in terms of whether to resort to international law or to historical rights. Philippine side, basically they stand on the bedrock of UN clause and the EEZ rights. Based on that,
you're talking about the issue of sovereignty. Yeah. Whereas we're still dealing with the issue of safety.
Yeah, but so the reason why I'm bringing that up is because actually I see two sides making the argument based on different grounds.
So Professor Tso, what we're saying that the Chinese side is that they're saying that the Philippines shouldn't have been there in the first place. Is that the point that you think that China is making?
Obviously, you can see that point in Chinese official media or government statement. However, I think what's really important for us is to know what's the motivation behind that behavior. I would like to say that the People's Republic of China is intended to let the world know that it has the resolve to confront international efforts in this area, which is aimed at China's claim over sovereignty in this area. So I think, in a way, China wants to make it big. So as we know that that incident happened when the four countries, including United States, Australia, Canada, and the Philippines, conduct a joint exercise in that region. And also China launched its so-called joint combat patrol in the same area. So China wants the world to know that it has this resolve to confront them.
So you believe that it's retaliation for the drills in Manila's EEZ?
Yeah, that's right. So it has both internal and international utility. Internally, it wants to show its people that China can control the situation. China is strong outside, but internationally, I think it wants to show to Philippines and other countries that that military exercise will be confronted by similar effort by China.
Okay, so Ronan, my question then is that the message that the international audience is getting, that China is in control, or is it actually getting, the message that China is being reckless, China is incredibly dangerous, China is essentially overstepping the line, because even if they do, claim this territory, surely there should still be norms of safety between two actors.
Yeah, so to make it short, I think China's response is gonna get backfired. It's gonna basically aggravate, the entire situation.
Let's talk a little bit about the detail of Professor Tso of this incident. Why is it that the Philippines, had a very strong reaction, and Marcos himself spoke about this. He doesn't go into every incident, but he did this time. Can you talk to us about, why is it dangerous to drop flares from one aircraft to another, very close? Why is that dangerous?
Of course, first of all, it can doing that could block the other flights in its way forward. Secondly, if that object was attached, if that object was attached to the other flight, that could lead to a burning.
Right.
So both possibilities are very dangerous.
Right.
Yeah, and I think for President Marcos, it is very important for him to make big on this incident. First of all, because it is dangerous, and all other countries make similar voice when they face similar situation. And secondly, because President Marcos just made an agreement with the PRC government in another show with regard to how to resupply their Navy ship. So
on Second Thomas Shoal.
Yeah, Second Thomas Shoal. So that is very important for President Marcos to show that he is not going to concede, so that the legitimacy of the previous agreement can be still supported by the Filipino public.
Right, Ronan, I'll let you. Let me just ask the question I was going to ask. So, in terms of what Professor just said, in fact, the Philippines has come out and said that they could review that agreement at any time. So I wanted to get your take on, does this indicate that the Philippines might have leverage over China if they're saying that can be reviewed? And then you also wanted to jump in on what, Professor?
Yeah, so I just want to say that basically we can see the escalation, from sea to sky. And the reason why you kept asking why was it so dangerous, and it was because basically it could create a power cake for potential conflict, right? So basically, when you are in you're a pilot, basically it's like split-second decision, and the escalation, the stakes are higher in terms of when the confrontation between Marines, and they have more maneuver times to consider what's going to be the next step going to be.
They're basically just going slower. Yeah, the vessels move slower on the sea rather than in the air. Yeah,
so that also increase the risk of miscalculation, and most importantly, the unintended consequences in terms of the incident in air is huge. The stakes are very, very high, right? So in terms of the Filipino decision to also reach out to China was, I think, on the one hand, they want to make sure that they make very clear that once you do something dangerous, we are going to respond. Right? So no way for us basically just to wait and see. We are going to respond.
So they responded by the diplomatic complaint, And how else can they respond?
I think they are going to reach out to perhaps the United States. And you can see that in the coming months, maybe some joint military operations will be conducted. As a way to send a very signal to China. Yeah.
Professor Tso, I wanted to go back to your point about, like trying to look at the motivation, the context, and there had been the drills, also the bilateral drills between the Philippines and Japan and Philippines and the US. China, in its response, in its retaliation, is it striking the right balance in terms of proportionality?
I think it depends. It really depends. I would say that the critically important point is to control the situation. And up to this point, I think it is still not beyond the point of, it has not reached the point of no return. So I think the situation is still well managed by the two sides, both the PRC and also the Philippines.
How much of that, though, is because the Philippines is showing restraint? A point that Professor made earlier, he said, from the Chinese point of view, it's the Philippines that's trespassing in their territory. But you can say the same of the Philippines. The Philippines also sees the Chinese, aircraft as trespassing, being in their territory, but they have not, executed a risky move. They haven't dropped flares.
And that's why I think that up to now, this is a play for both sides to show to the international world, to show to the international community who is right, who is wrong, and also to illustrate to their domestic audience that who is capable of managing the situation. So that's why you can see that from the Philippine side, the pilot actually get a picture of that behavior, of the behavior done by the PLA fighter jet. Yeah, and also you can see also in Chinese side, in PRC side, some online posters, some online postings or discussions are going viral. So these two sides.
And what do they say? If you can tell our international audience, what's the flavor of them?
Okay, basically they are saying that the PLA is to defend China's territory and to show their resolve to defend their sovereignty. I think this is a thing people are quite familiar with. What I want to say is that the military confrontation is not the main dish. The main dish is to show to the world who actually commands the moral high.
So who commands the moral high ground?
Yeah, that's right, moral high ground.
So in that case, Professor Fu, who is winning?
I would say right now the Filipino side is winning. I would like also to piggyback on Professor Tso's point and just to share to the international audience what the Chinese, perhaps not official narratives, but you can see a lot of posting online. Some people will call it like cyber nationalism. So one point being made very clear by them is that they are worried about the involvement or extra regional power. In this case, it's very clear, the United States, right? So they are hinting that the United States could be behind the scene, trying to instruct the Filipino to engage China on that front, and they even have like a stand saying that they want to make it very clear to the Filipino side that do not use external power to try to balance against us. Yeah.
And this is an interesting narrative, though, isn't it? Because when you have the contest between the Philippines and China, obviously China is massively superior in terms of numbers, resources, firepower and weapon systems. So, it's only natural, isn't it, for the Philippines to draw on its allies and especially its mutual defense treaty ally, the United States. The Philippines and Vietnam held their first joint exercise, with both countries deploying their Coast Guard vessels. The training focused on search and rescue simulations, explosion and fire prevention. Earlier this year, the Philippines and Vietnam signed several agreements to prevent incidents in the South China Sea and to enhance cooperation between their coast guards. Professor Fu, let me ask you, to what extent can we interpret these joint exercises as, the two nations coming together to essentially, push back, resist Beijing in the South China Sea, where both have claims which overlap with China?
Yeah, so they also have like conflicting claims. So, the cooperation can be, the fact that the cooperation can be achieved, signifies a very, very important improvement. And some people might even say that maybe that signifies like a paradigm shift. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Basically, the joint exercise between these two countries, this can be interpreted as a significant step toward resisting China's expansive expansion in terms of their maritime claims. Mm-hmm. And obviously, we'll argue that actually they just stick to the old principles, right? So they did not further, claim basically waters and so forth and so on. But to these two countries, it's very clear that even though they do not agree on every single item, but they are able to reach at the consensus that, okay, so that put that aside, just focus on, trying to deter China from, furthering its maritime, claims. I think that marks a very significant step for
Okay, Professor Tso, that's a very interesting point there, because as we know, Vietnam has traditionally been, reluctant to stand up to China. So do you agree with an assessment by Professor Fu? Is Vietnam, partnering with the Philippines to resist China?
No, I don't think so, because Vietnam also did similar exercise with PRC, right, and also with some other countries as well. So, and also I would like to draw the audience attention to the fact that almost at the same time when Vietnam held the exercise with the Philippines, Vietnam sent a guided missile vessel to Guangdong province. And also that visit is accompanied by some military exercise with the PLA Navy ships. So I think Vietnam is doing things, doing opposite things at the same time. So at the time when it started its exercise with Philippines, it did the same thing with PRC. And also, we also need to look at the nature of the exercise between Vietnam and the Philippines. In fact, that exercise is basically about rescue and search and rescue. So basically, it's a humanitarian mission, not a military, not a military nature.
Okay. Do you think Beijing will see it that way, Professor Fu?
Not necessarily. So you can say something, but you have to think about the unintended consequences of your actions and also your verbal expression. So I actually agree with Professor Zhou, but I would like to highlight that what Vietnam is trying to do is basically follow the principle of bamboo diplomacy or hedging. So on the one hand, you can see that they are trying to extend the olive branch to China, but you can also see that they reach out to the United States and also to the Philippines and sometimes even Japan. So I would say that they are playing a very strategic game, and then they will take everything into consideration. I agree with Professor Zhou that actually this mission is more on, for example, rescue, exploration, and sometimes fire prevention. Yeah, but I would also want to highlight that they can actually say no or choose not to engage in that kind of joint exercises. The fact that they agreed to do that at this critical juncture suggests that they at least take into China's maritime expansion into consideration. Yeah.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, Professor Fu, the overlapping claims. We have a map here. So the Philippines and Vietnam do have overlapping claims to the South China Sea, as you can see in this map, and they also overlap with China's extensive claims under its 10-dash line. Taiwan has inherited claims relating to the ROC when the KMT controlled China in the late 1920s to 1930s, though Taiwan's current government does not assert claims to 90% of the South China Sea. Professor Tso, given that the two, as we saw, have essentially the overlapping of the Spratly Islands, how significant is it in that sense?
As I said, I also agree with Professor Fu that this is in line with Vietnam's bamboo diplomacy, by which Vietnam conducts a hedging approach toward China. So, in fact, as you just mentioned, China also has overlapping sovereignty claim in Spratly Islands with Vietnam, but both sides conduct annual joint patrol in Beibu Gulf for more than 2 decades. Yeah, so and their mutual visit by Navy ships is quite often. So by these two criteria, I don't think the Vietnam-Philippines joint exercise this time is beyond Vietnam's bamboo diplomacy.
Okay, but it is a new development.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. So after the Vietnam-Philippine announcement, a Chinese drone, the WZ-10, flew from Hainan Island, which is China, to the Vietnamese coastline and then returned along the same route. Its tracker was left on. It marked the first time in 5 years that such an operation has occurred. So, Professor Fu, you know, we were talking about Beijing's reaction.
Yeah.
Is this a demonstration of that?
I don't have very straightforward evidence, but I would say it's plausible that they are trying to deliver a very clear message. Number one, they're trying to drive a wedge, between these two countries. And number two, Beijing is trying to demonstrate that it has the military capability to make something happen. So on the one hand, it's a show of resolve. On the other hand, it's a show of military muscle. But I don't think that Beijing will try to, part ways with, Hanoi. I think they will try to make it very clear that, we are here and we can talk about everything that you want to talk, right? So that, once you save me some face and you can also, take into consideration about my red flag, then we can still cooperate. Because you also see that, in addition to that, Beijing is also trying to, be somewhat accommodative to Vietnam.
Yeah, let's talk about that now. So Vietnam's newly appointed General Secretary, Tho Lam, is set to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping on August 18th for a 2-day trip. Now, when Tho Lam took over Vietnam's highest position, Xi sent him a congratulatory message expressing hope to work with Tho to lead the China-Vietnam community of common destiny toward deeper and more practical cooperation. So, Professor Tso, let me come to you. So obviously we know that the relationship is strong between these two sides. It's built on, communism, brothers. But at the same time, I think it is it clear, though, that Hanoi hasn't been very happy with what Beijing has been doing in the South China Sea?
Well, that's for sure. Hanoi has always been dissatisfied with the way Beijing deals with the South China Sea issues. I think what we need to know is the new leadership in Vietnam, led by Tho Lam. Yeah, President Tho Lam, he is currently also the VCP's General Secretary. He actually grows in his career from the public security apparatus. So that system has a very tight relationship to CCP in Beijing.
So why is there that very close relationship?
Of course, two reasons. First of all, for practical purpose, they both need to tackle the illegal, the transnational crimes across the borders. And secondly, Vietnam actually learned from PRC in conducting the so-called anti-corruption campaign. And Vietnam, the VCP learns from CCP that it could boost the party's legitimacy and help the party control, maintain the power.
Yeah. Okay, so final word to you, Professor Phu. Do you see, in the future, Vietnam doing more exercises with the Philippines?
I don't think this is going to be the last, but I think they're going to do more, both with the Philippines and also China, because preserving a somewhat amicable relationship with Beijing is the vital interest that they consider for a very long time. And I agree with Professor Tso that it's not going to change for a very long time. They will have to take that into consideration. But at the same time, given the pressure China imposed on Vietnam on South China Sea, they are going to do something also to send a very clear message to Beijing that they're unhappy about what's going on in South China Sea. So they better, exercise some restraint on that front.
Okay, we're going to have to end it there. Thank you so much, Tso Chen-dong and Ronan Phu, for joining Taiwan Talks today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.
We bring you stories from Taiwan every day of the week.
Our reporters travel the nation.
Exploring the issues that matter to you. News from here in Taiwan and around the world.
What's Up Taiwan on Taiwan Plus.
In the face of adversity, the power of truth.
A roadmap for a just and open world, charted by the freest country in Asia.
Taipei for Taiwan Plus.
Taiwan Plus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.